one of those who fought the system, or at least, appeared to be fighting it in the beginning, was Walt Disney. Disney was born in the Midwest and learned cartoon animation on his own. His attempts to get his short cartoons marketed ran into constant roadblocks, as you might guess, from the chosen elite who ran Hollywood. Initially, he was only able to sell a number of animated cartoons he produced for small stipends, a few bucks here, a few bucks there. At that time, one of the most popular cartoons was Felix the Cat. Trying to produce a cartoon that would equal Felix the Cat, in popularity, Disney came up with a character called Oswald the Rabbit. Not so well known today as, Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse, but pretty big back then. In an effort to get more of his work recognized, he contacted a New York distributor by the name of Margaret Winkler. He also produced a series of cartoons based on Alice in Wonderland, which Ms. Winkler contracted with him to produce. I'll have more to say on Alice in Wonderland later on. It's pretty shocking stuff. Very shocking stuff. Anyway, at this time, a Hollywood Jew who had worked for Warner Brothers, Charles Mintz, D.C., was courting Ms. Winkler, and upon seeing the Oswald the Rabbit samples, could sense that it was every bit as good as Felix the Cat, and thus could make him a lot of money. In order to get on Walt's good side and get his hands on Oswald the Rabbit, Mintz agreed to advance Walt's $1,800, pretty good amount of money back then, and to pay him for another 18 cartoons in the Alice series, Alice in Wonderland. Jubilant, the Disney brothers took the deal and promptly set about purchasing a studio on Hyperion Avenue in Hollywood. So Mintz had set the stage, again, not, for his own sake, thinking of his own pocket, but nevertheless, Disney saw this great opportunity, he jumped on it. Anyway, after the Disney brothers had completed the construction of their modest studio in Hollywood, Mintz dropped the bomb on them. He told them that due to the lack of interest, the Alice series would have to be dropped, and his contact with them would have to be canceled. Imagine that. All this money that was advanced to them, they had, put a good deal of that into putting this studio together. Now he drops the whole thing. All during this time, Mintz had been traveling between Hollywood and New York, making secret deals with his fellow elite Jew pig buddy, Carl Laemmle, which I mentioned, on Friday. Laemmle wanted a cartoon character based on Felix the Cat to compete with it. And Mintz knew Disney had already created such a character, the rabbit named Oswald. Disney, paying much attention to the sleazy contacts that Mintz had the contracts that he had negotiated with him. You know, he didn't read the fine print, if you will. He didn't realize that these contracts had, in fact, caused him to sign away rights to Oswald the Rabbit and to all goods sold through the promotion of the cartoon. Imagine that. It was in the contract. Disney didn't read it. He didn't realize the kind of sleazy scumbag he was dealing with. This has happened many times, ladies and gentlemen, with actors and musical performers over the years, getting royally screwed by their Jew handlers. And then, you know, when they would open up and start to talk about it, boom, dead. That's what Dennis Quaid was talking about when he referred to the Hollywood star whackers. Anyway, keeping his side of the bargain, Disney produced Trolley Troubles featuring Oswald and faithfully gave Mintz new cartoons in the series 2 weeks at $2,500 a cartoon and part of the box office gross. So even knowing he was getting screwed over, he still produced them. He figured, well, this is the only way I'm going to make any money. That's just the way that this SOB wanted it. You know, he wanted to maximize the profits, just throw him a few little pennies just to shut him up. Look, you're making some money. You're making some living off of this. Anyway, soon thereafter, Walt Disney found out by accident. Oh, I guess he didn't know at this stage. He was still going along with the contract, not realizing he was getting stiffed. He found out by accident about the secret Oswald merchandise marketing deal that Mintz had made with his New York buddy there, lamely. Didn't realize that, you know, he had set him up with the fine print in the contract. Without his knowledge, without his consent. When Walt complained, his brother Roy calmed him down by telling him that the sales of the merchandise would help promote the Oswald series and thus make him money when customers, you know, came to see the movie. So don't worry about it. It's just a minor thing. It's not major, you know. Oh, it was major. But then in 1928, he and his wife went to New York to negotiate a new contract with Mintz. When they met him in a typical arrogant fashion, he told Disney that his advance per cartoon had been cut from $2,500 to $1,800. Look at this crap. Cut him down $700 a month, or $700 a pop, you know, for each cartoon. Now, think about that. He was already stiffing him as it was, right? Not giving him royalties on the, you know, the promotions and, you know, the toys or whatever based around the cartoons. Now he's cutting him down. All the while, you know, sales are going up, right? The popularity of his cartoons are growing. The money is flowing in. That $2,500 for a cartoon was a drop in the bucket, but this is how these pieces of inhuman anal excretions work, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, Mintz went on to tell Disney that if he didn't like it, the cartoon production world would be taken over by a Mintz front called Snappy Inc. And Walt's own employees would be hired to produce the cartoons in spite of him. Look at the arrogant SOB. I get all this money at my disposal. I can buy off your employees easily. They'll work for me now. They'll continue doing the cartoons for me. You'll lose. You'll have nothing. I'll win. I'll have everything. Called his brother Roy, knowing that he was a little more malleable, and told him what had happened. I mean, I'm sorry, Walt, not Mintz. Walt called Roy, told him what had happened. And Roy told him that Mintz, according to the contract that Walt had signed, owned all the rights to Oswald, including the name. So the brother knew. The brother was happy with it, and he was trying to tell Walt to be happy with it. But we're getting screwed. He's not only paying us royalties for the promotional toys and whatnot, but now he's cutting us back on it. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just, it's in the contract. You didn't know that? Holy crap. Roy then informed Walt that the animators that Walt had hired in Hollywood, to help produce Oswald, had suddenly quit because, of course, Mintz had already encouraged them to come work for him, probably offering them, a slight raise, more than what Walt was paying, just to lure them in. And then once lured in, of course, then we'll stiff them later and lower their wages, and they'll stay with us because they'll realize they have nowhere to go. The Hollywood Jews went straight to work for Mintz. And only the non-Jews that Disney brought with him from the Midwest had stayed loyal, just a small minority. In the desperation, Disney appealed to Lamely, about his rights, but he told Disney that he couldn't help and that he would only deal with the series distributor, who was Mintz, of course. He thought, by going directly to Lamely, he would get somewhere, not realizing that the two were in cahoots, of course. They were fellow tribesmen, for God's sake. Anyway, cut out by this Jewish group, Disney returned to Hollywood and created what was later to be known as Mickey Mouse. After Mickey Mouse proved to be successful, Carl Laemmle came to Disney in an effort to distribute the film. He offered to distribute Mickey Mouse if Disney would give him the copyright to it. Big mistake. It was now Disney's time to get even. He flatly turned him down. Well, that was good. Unfortunately, however, Disney did not have the upper hand. Laemmle and his fellow Jewish distributors of films were known as the Majors, and after Disney gave the cold shoulder to Laemmle, none of the Hollywood Jews would distribute his Mickey Mouse series for him. Obviously, one quick phone call, and that was the end of that. Being a Gentile, of course, Disney could not penetrate the tightly knit elite Jew-run system. He then turned to another man who had a falling out with Laemmle and his fellow elite Jew pigs, Pat Powers. Anyway, Powers made a deal to distribute the series on a states' rights basis to as many independent theaters, as possible. But irregularities in the amount of earnings and the amount the Disney brothers had soon brought about an end to the Disney Powers alliance. The money that they were receiving, it wasn't adding up. They were basically getting another screw Jew job. Anyway, as much as Disney searched, he could not find a Gentile distributor for his production. It just didn't exist. It was all Jew run. Finally, he made a deal with Harry Cohen, the head of Columbia Pictures. Sensing the profits to be made from Disney Productions, Cohen fought off the other chosen wolves on behalf of Disney. Again, thinking of his own skin, but nevertheless realizing, hey, I'm not going to go along with the pressure here. There's money to be made. I'm going to do it. So he was the only one that opened the door to Disney at this point. But nevertheless, you do a deed, strike up a deal with the devil, and there's prices to be paid. So if there really was this animosity, like I said, they won in the end. Maybe Mr. Harry Cohen appeased the opposition in, Jew-run Hollywood by telling them, hey, look, I'm going to set this guy up. I'm going to work with him, but I'm going to make sure that he uses his cartoons to corrupt the public with. That's probably what happened. You'll hit the big time. We'll make sure you get a good cut. The contract was drafted up in a more acceptable manner, to Disney. But you need to change some things. And of course, look, as time went on, Disney was producing cartoons basically as recruiting tools for the frickin' army, during World War II, encouraging people to suit up and fly to Germany or fly to Europe and fight the Germans, fight those evil Nazis. Look at all the frickin' twisted Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck cartoons, that had that little message going on. Unreal, man. Total propaganda. You can just see how, they were using him and how, he was willfully participating in this scam. The next problem faced by Disney, as the popularity of his productions had increased, was organized crime. Of course, you could call Hollywood organized crime, couldn't you? Anyway, it was organized crime and its efforts to form and control all movie-based unions. They wanted a monopoly on that. Anyway, the mob infiltrated the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or IATSE, in their effort, to control and exploit Hollywood. The two main figures behind this effort were the Jews Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky, two of the top kingpins of organized crime. Like I said, I'll do a whole show on that sometime, but those are two names to remember right there. All your Italian crime bosses answer to these scumbags. Disney had found distributors. He was always in need of more money to cover production costs and expansion, and so it was impossible to make it in the business or continue therein without having to deal with these powerful, corrupt elements, the mob. So very often he was forced, to have to play the game. Disney soon severed his dealings with Columbia Pictures, at which time United Artists took over distribution of Disney Productions. One of Disney's most successful cartoons was the Three Little Pigs, In the original Three Little Pigs, there was a scene when the big bad wolf disguised himself as a Jewish peddler to trick one of the pigs into opening the door. You gotta wonder if that had some little subtle connotations there. If it was a little dig back at, what he had dealt with. As soon as word leaked out about this scene, however, representatives of a number of Jewish organizations beat a path to Disney to get the offensive scene removed. Look how they work. They pounce on things like this long before it ever gets out. Look at Monsanto, when they heard that this small local Fox affiliate down in Florida was going to do a story, just a local story in Florida on the BGH swindle and how it was, it was cancer-causing bovine growth hormone, produced by Monsanto. Immediately, the local affiliate gets a call from headquarters up in New York, cancel it, pull it. And so that was it. Out the window went this story that these two reporters had worked meticulously on. They were still adamant about getting the word out, so they were still insistent on the thing being aired. So they fired him. You know that story. Same kind of crap. The hand of the same kind of crap people. Anyway, Disney removed the scene and told the Hollywood Jews that it was a spoof depicting Carl Laemmle's continuous efforts to blow down the house of Disney. Next came Julius Schenck of United Artists, which was distributing Disney Productions. He had carefully set a trap for Disney. Schenck recommended that Disney seek funding from the Bank of America. And personally, United Artists' financial advisor at the bank, another Jew, of course, Joseph Rosenberg, he gladly opened a line of credit for Disney, but he never gave him enough to be effective, and he later helped bring down the Disney empire. Disney constantly found himself the victim of walkouts by Jews that he had hired or by Marxist agitators who were constantly forming unions in Hollywood. Unbelievable, man. Hollywood Jews constantly used unions to curb the growth of Disney Productions. And an effort to break the control of the majors, as they were called, over Hollywood was made when several independent filmmakers formed the Society of Independent Motion Picture Producers, or SIMP, S-I-M-P-P. The leading non-Jews in SIMP were William Cagney, Walt Disney, of course, Mary Pickford, Edward Small, Orson Welles, and Walter Wagner. Orson Welles, interesting. Anyway, a few Jewish studio moguls who had found themselves cut out of the action by the majors had supported SIMP as well, who had gotten the shaft. They were David Selznick, Saul Lesser, and Sam Goldwyn. These are some of the ostracized Jews that joined along with Disney and others. The dictatorial control of the Jewish majors was thusly described by Mark Elliott, Disney's biographer. He said, for the most part, the majors were still controlled by the same group of men who had first broken the iron grip of the old Edison Trust. Ironically, a quarter of a century later, their success had led them to create an even more anti-competitive environment, monopolizing even more so of an anti-competitive environment than the one from which they had desperately fled. So much so that no independent film could gain national distribution unless the filmmaker or studio dealt with one of the majors, the Jews, who not only controlled all the distribution networks, but outward virtually every first-run theater in the country. They had owned them all. Even at that early stage, they owned almost every first-run theater in the country. So, complete monopoly. Disney raised the ire of the majors. And notice, this Disney biographer, he uses the term majors. They're Jews. Why don't you just come out and say it? Damn it. Anyway, he raised the ire of the majors when he publicly attended America First meetings and had even stood beside Charles Lindbergh at one rally. Oh, that really got their dander up. To retaliate, the red-dominated unions kept strife going at the Disney studios. Red meaning, of course, communism. So, they turned up the heat on him even more. How dare you support America First and go against our beloved communist doctrine? Unfreaking real. So with that said, let's look a little closer at the communism factor here. In the early 1930s, it was a well-known fact that the sympathies of the majority of Jews in Hollywood was in favor of socialism and communism. And why not? They were both, Jewish creations, of course, naturally. Anyway, Neil Gabler, in his book, An Empire of Their Own, had this to say about communist influences in Hollywood. He said, Jews had first forged ties to the parties of the left and to the Communist Party specifically back in Europe. One leading communist estimated that 50% of the party's members were Jewish during its heyday in the 30s and 40s, and a large minority, sometimes a majority, of the party leadership was Jewish, of course. What was true of the National Party was even true in Hollywood, where they already formed a large part of the left-leaning artistic community. One member complained that nearly 90% of the party in Los Angeles was Jewish. Ringleader Jr., himself a party member, impression that it was well over 56%, somewhat like maybe 2/3, he said. I said ringleader, Ringlardner, excuse me. Ringlardner Jr. himself, the party member, had even voiced concern that the ratio was way out of whack. As it became apparent that the communist movement in the United States was mainly Jewish-led, Congressman Samuel Dickstein of New York, himself a Jew, took steps to protect his co-racialists. He moved to have a special committee set up in Congress to investigate those who were pouring forth documents, proving that Jewish Bolsheviks were running the Soviet Union and had killed almost 30 million Russians and Ukrainians, and were the leaders of the communist movement in Europe. Imagine that. He wanted to hide this fact. By calling those who dared to criticize Jewish groups as Nazis, to label them as Nazis, Dick Stein felt, that he could bully loyal Americans into silence. In January of 1934, Congress voted to establish a House Committee, of course, on Un-American Affairs, or HUAC, to investigate, communist activities in the United States. And when I say Congress voted, once again, it was, for the most part, there were some sincere people in Congress opposed to communism, but for the most part, it was just a token, window dressing. Anyway, the bias of Dick Stein was so apparent that by 1937, his anti-German and anti-Gentile rantings were drawing attention, to other Jews. It was becoming obvious, his little Jew agenda. When he tried to get the HUAC mandate renewed, the measure had failed. The Hollywood Jews then backed Congressman Martin Dies, a non-Jew, in setting up a committee with the same name under his chairmanship. Well, we'll just get a non-Jew. They won't be so suspicious. This is so obvious, this sleazy little tactics. Anyway, Dies voiced their concern when he said, quote, "Many of our Jewish citizens wanted Dick Stein eliminated because they felt, excuse me, he was furnishing ammunition to the Nazis and other anti-Semitic movements, whatever." By 1939, Dies' investigation, subversion in America, had opened his eyes to the reality that the facts uncovered by the committee substantiated the claim that Hollywood was indeed pro-communist, just as many so-called, anti-Semites had claimed. You began to realize, wow, they were right. Neil Gabler quoted Dies, who told key figures in Hollywood, quote, "I told the producers that we had reliable information that a number of film actors and screenwriters and a few producers either were members of the Communist Party, followed the communist line, or were used as dupes, and that there was evidence that the Hollywood Anti-Nazi League was under the control of the communists." So here it is. This guy they hired to defend them actually had come full circle. Dies thus retired from Congress in 1944, at which time a fiery congressman named John Rankin of Mississippi used his influence to get the HUAC made into a permanent committee of Congress, but this time to investigate communist influences. Rankin's investigation further opened his eyes to the fact that Hollywood Jews were behind the anti-moral assault on America. Rankin told the press that, quote, the information we get is that Hollywood is the greatest hotbed of subversive activities in the United States. Yeah, absolutely. We're on the trail of the tarantula now, he said, and we're going to follow through. We are not trying to hound legitimate writers, but we are out to expose those elements that are insidiously trying to spread subversive propaganda. Poison the minds of your children, distort the history of our country, and discredit Christianity. Well, whatever. Alien-minded communistic enemies of Christianity and their stooges are trying to take control over radio. Listen to their lying broadcasts in broken English, he said, and you can almost smell them. They are now trying to take over the motion picture industry, and how to high heaven when our Committee on Un-American Activities proposed to investigate them. In other words, how were they able to do this when the HUAC is supposed to be on their tail? Like I said, it was just a token public window dressing feature that they had created. He says they want to spread their un-American propaganda as well as their immoral anti-Christian standards. Whatever, anti-Christian. Before the eyes of your children in every county in America. So there you go. Very true. Too bad that spirit is dead in Congress today. You won't find one among them, ladies and gentlemen, now nor ever again, with any moral fortitude. Those days are gone. All gone. They saw to that. This was quite a fantastic twist, considering the fact that Jews had originally founded the HUAC in an effort to stifle legitimate criticism of their activities in America and place focus on Nazis. But by 1945, it had gone full circle and was being used as a legitimate vehicle, for patriots to go after those who were influenced by communism and trying to change the thinking of America. It was a complete backfire. This gave Walt Disney, along with other non-Jews who had been discriminated against by the majors, a chance to try and bring an end to the Jewish domination of Hollywood and the HUAC leanings went on well, into the 1960s. So things actually did turn around. Spotlight was on Hollywood. Not anymore, but back then it was. Disney and his Motion Picture Alliance for the preservation of American ideals that he had created, which I'll have more to say about later, tried to break the Jewish communist stranglehold on Hollywood. As this organization and the HUAC fought the Red/Jewish influence in Hollywood, the Reds kept striking back by fomenting one strike after the other against Disney and others who opposed them. That was their way of, fighting back. Walt openly vowed to keep the commies out of his studio, and he told the press that the strikes at his studio were orchestrated by the communist conspiracy, he called it, This was before the era of McCarthyism. Disney's biographer, Mark Elliott, had wrote, ever since Sinclair's gubernatorial campaign helped unify Hollywood's left, the Communist Party of the United States of America, or CPUSA, had made its presence felt by championing the rights of the film industry's workers. The CPUSA played a vital role in the Screenwriters Guild's long battle to exist, thus helping to make legitimate the industry's burgeoning union movement. In 1941, the CPUSA backed strikers in Disney Studios who were fomenting trouble through the Screenwriters Guild. Most of the Disney staff walked out on strike. Look at the little game here. Pressure was brought on Disney to settle the strike by the elite Jew pig Bank of America, representative there, Rosenberg, who told them that the effects of the strike would, quote, damage his relationship with the Bank of America. Look at this. So it looks like, our fingerprints aren't on the gun. The Jewish tentacles of the Bank of America were brought to bear on Disney. And that wasn't the end, of course. Even more sleazy tactics were pulled off. A further attack was launched on Disney by King Features when Jewish groups had accused Disney of being a Nazi because they claimed that there was a swastika drawn in the 1940 Mickey Mouse cartoon. The swastika, quote unquote, was in the form of two crossed musical notes. Oh, give me a break. Go grab it, anything, and then twist it to suit their agenda. Efforts to get Disney to support Roosevelt and his get us into war effort had failed, as long as Walt Disney kept tight control over his studio, always trying to get him to support the war effort. And he didn't early on, of course, as time went on. Obviously he did. In an effort to get Disney away from the studio, Roosevelt instructed Nelson Rockefeller to make Disney part of a tour, to South America by actors allegedly sent to counter Nazi propaganda there. He told Walt, to participate in this tour. Rockefeller had been named the official coordinator of the State Department's Inter-American Affairs Group. Oh, you gotta love it, man. Roosevelt was particularly concerned because of Disney's appearances at America First rallies alongside Charles Lindbergh, being the Jew that he was, of course. He didn't like that. From all indications, Roy Disney was a part of the plot to get Walt away from the Disney studio. His brother always seemed to be a little kiss-up anyway, so that, the strike could be settled, and so that, in Roy's reasoning, Walt could be cleared of the charges leveled against him of being a Nazi sympathizer. Walt and his entourage left for South America on August 17th. So, it worked. They got him out of the way. And on the 9th of September, Roy Disney met with James Dewey and agreed to arbitration to settle the strike. All the cat's away, the mice will. When Walt received news of the sellout by Roy, he vowed to close down the studio forever rather than have the red-dominated cartoonists guild running it. But he didn't have to close it. Elite Juke had that taken care of for him. They did it themselves. Anyway, it seems that Roosevelt and the Hollywood Jews had made plans well into to shut down Disney Studios. They had a backup plan. If we can't get him, to conform, we'll just shut him down. But it turns out that on December 8th, 1941, get this, the Army seized Disney's studio, claiming that they had to use it as a defense station to protect Lockheed, which was located nearby. Can you imagine this? Can you frickin' believe this? Right. What were they protecting it from? What a scam. Disney Studio was the only one seized by the government. Why? There were other studios. They should have been seized as well, right, if this was a legitimate potential threat. With his studio and production facilities sequestered by the government, Disney was now without a job. Unbelievable, guys. The next step in the plot against Disney was when the Naval Bureau of Aeronautics contacted him and offered him $80,000 animated training film. You see what was going on here? Not only were they doing this on behalf of their Elite Juke Pig buddies, but they wanted him as a propaganda tool. This is how he started making propaganda cartoons. They seized his frickin' studio. Oh, by the way, can you frickin' believe this? This move was evidently orchestrated by then Secretary of the Treasury, the Elite Jew Henry Morgenthau. Must have been his little brainchild. According to Disney, he had been forced to, quote, accept that Jew, and was being forced by circumstances to be used by Morgenthau, quote, to deliver political propaganda films that cashed in on the popularity of that all-American mouse, Mickey. To use Mickey as a propaganda tool to advance the war cause. And people think that, this came about decades later. This kind of thing started with, the Vietnam War. Are you kidding? Disney referred to his, as we'll see on a future show, we'll be looking at the propaganda that surrounded the American Revolution. My God, right from the beginning. They were using massive propaganda campaigns to push that war effort, too. Disney referred to his cartoon characters as captives who were forced to perform for the Stromboli-like Morgenthau. That's his own words. So notice, yes, he did produce cartoons. Yes, he did cave. But he wasn't happy about it. Was he sincere in saying that? I don't see any reason to think otherwise. I think he was. I think he was genuinely fed up. He called it propaganda himself. But like I said, what's very unfortunate is that even prior to this time, Disney was showing signs right within his cartoons themselves of being a sellout scumbag. So, was it because he was a genuine scumbag, or was he in order to get the contract so he could get into the business? Either way, it's not a good thing, but it's pretty sad. Because on the one hand, he did seem to have somewhat of a conscience and did really seem genuinely to be in battle with these pieces of friggin' crap. Anyway, the crowning achievement of Morgenthau was to have Disney produce a cartoon featuring Donald Duck, which openly mocked Hitler with the title "Der Führer's Face." this move by Morgenthau produced more animosity between Disney and Morgenthau as Disney made the movie under protest. You know, he made it known publicly that he wasn't happy about this. However, Morgenthau made it look like Disney approved of the project and had him given awards by Hollywood and consequently moved more business his way. You see what he was doing, trying to buy him off. Anyway, the studio was returned to Disney 8 months after it was closed by the Army, that did what they wanted. Trying to add insult to injury, however, the National Council of Christians and Jews, NCCJ, contacted Disney in an effort to get him to make a cartoon to promote unity in America. Oh, my God, man. You got to be kidding me. They told him that the move, quote, would depict human prejudices. So that, you know, they're basically telling him, we not only want you to make this cartoon, we're going to dictate exactly how it's done. Disney rejected the proposal outright and said it was a disguised attempt by the NCCJ to promote communism in America. Yeah. This attempt, again, confirmed Disney's view that Hollywood, you know, was being consumed by communism. Response, he set out to make battle plans, if you will, to counter their moves and to recruit soldiers for the fight against the Reds in Hollywood. And so that's what we find. He waged war. One of the first moves Disney made in his efforts to combat Hollywood's elite Jew communists was to help found the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, as mentioned earlier. You know, he did this in 1944. He was co-chairman of the organization, and among his members were people like Robert Taylor, John Wayne, Gary Cooper, Ward Bond, Charles Colburn, Jew, of course, Adolphe Menjou, Hedda Hopper, and 65 other key Hollywood personalities. As vice president of the Motion Picture Alliance, Disney wrote to Senator Robert R. Reynolds and called on HUAC to investigate Red influence in Hollywood. In his open letter of March 7, 1944, Disney said that Hollywood had been, quote, coddling communists and those with un-American beliefs. Again, you look at stuff like this, it'd be pretty hard to interpret this as anything but a genuine battle. Why would Jews want negative attention drawn to them at all as communists? They wanted that connection divorced, you know, in the public eye. Disney and the Jew Samuel Goldwyn had been cut off from full market access by the Big Five, as they were called, who controlled most of the theaters in America: Paramount, Lowe's, Warner, 20th Century Fox, and RKO. When the Fox-owned T&D Theater insulted Goodwin, you know, when he wanted to exhibit his movie Up in Arms, Disney joined with Goodwin, I should say, in trying to break the hold of the Big Five over film distribution. They rented the El Paso nightclub, to review the movie. And then after that, all hell had broken loose. The power of the Big Five was evident when the Reno County commissioners issued multiple violations for the El Paso. And check it out, the fire department said that it would prevent the showing based on, alleged fire safety violations. Can you frickin' believe it? Again, it's like sending in the army to shut down Disney Studios, the only studio that come on, man. To appease the Big Five, the proceeds of the showing had to be contributed to the Red Cross, another Jew-controlled enterprise. Legal action was taken to break up the Big Five monopoly by SIMP, the group I mentioned earlier. And in the case of the United States of America versus Paramount, Supreme Court ruled that the Big Five were prohibited from expanding their holdings and control over the production, distribution, and exhibition of movies. That's because it wasn't totally Jew-dominated at the time. That wouldn't work today. A small victory for Disney, but a victory nonetheless. The actions of Disney, SIMP, and the handful of patriots in Hollywood led to HUAC investigating hundreds of Reds in Hollywood, mostly Jewish, of course. A number of the most notorious Reds were consequently blacklisted by Hollywood movie makers because of fear that HUAC would also investigate them. So it's kind of funny. They were all, pointing fingers at each other now. Unbelievable. Like cockroaches when you flash a light on them, scatter in every direction. Every man for himself. This ban on outright Reds in Hollywood lasted until about 1965. And, look how America's come full circle now. Freaking communism is praised left and right. Anyway, the evil empire, if you will, struck back after 1965. Many of those blacklisted by HUAC were back in Hollywood making movies that exposed their so-called persecution. Things had died down at this point, the anti-communist campaign. And so now they're going to redeem not only their reputation, but they're going to redeem the reputation of communism itself. One of the first efforts by the Reds to show their rehabilitation and power over Hollywood was the movie The Front by Woody Allen. What a scumbag he is. But The Front, interesting, just the title of the movie. Yeah, they're a front, all right. From screenwriters to producers to actors, those involved in the movie The Front were Hollywood Reds who had been investigated by HUAC and, had been fired from their jobs previously by Jewish studio owners and producers who were afraid not to fire them, even though they themselves sympathized with them. They didn't want to wind up under the firing squad, too. So they turned on themselves, at least temporarily, anyway. Anyway, it seems that Americans have short memory spans, doesn't it? Because by the time Walt Disney died in 1966, Jewish Reds were back in Hollywood. Thumbing their noses at those who had fought so hard to bring Hollywood back under American control. Nope, here they were back in business, stronger than ever. Unbelievable. They're relentless, ladies and gentlemen. They don't stop.
after all the trouble that he was getting, not only from Hollywood elites, but even the mob, as I mentioned yesterday, with their little protection racket schemes, he struck up a rather strange alliance with Howard Hughes. Always short of funds, Disney found a temporary ally in billionaire Howard Hughes. Hughes had purchased RKO Studios and its distribution network, and was also wary of the controllers of Hollywood. Not only of their control of Hollywood, but America as a whole. So Hughes, as it turns out, loaned Disney several $1 million, interest-free, which Disney paid back in full over, the ensuing several years or whatever. Anyway, while a good businessman, Hughes was a terrible studio manager. Perhaps when he took RKO over from the tribe there, they some of them stayed on and ran the network on his behalf, but it seemed like it was designed, to make him look like a fool and to ruin his investment, because they produced flop after flop while he owned RKO, as they had recently done at that time, to Columbia Pictures. I don't think this was an accident. They wanted to ensure that there would be nobody else in the business unless, they were in bed with him. Obviously he wasn't, so this was designed to crush him out of the whole, and again, he wasn't experienced in this area. He didn't really know how to handle it, and so their tactics proved quite effective. Anyway, in any case, Disney wanted his own means of distribution, and thus he founded Buena Vista as an attempt to, establish his own network, independent of the Hollywood apparatus. Hughes offered to give Disney RKO for free, as well as a $10 million credit line, again with no interest. Imagine if the world worked that way today. So, Hughes did have some, at least on the surface anyway, some decent redeeming qualities to him. Like I said, I'll have to put some notes together on him sometime. But anyway, as it turned out, even though this was a pretty generous offer, Disney's advisors soured him on the deal, and they discouraged him from doing it for whatever reason. You got to wonder who these advisors were. I mean, that was quite an opportunity, unless they suspected Hughes was up to no good. But who knows? That seems hard to believe, because Hughes was getting shafted himself from the Hollywooders. One of them might have, in fact, have been Rosenberg of the the Bank of America, who feared that Disney, in charge of RKO, would become a major challenge to the tribal domination of Hollywood. Maybe that came from him. It just doesn't make sense. Disney passed up, a hell of an opportunity. I don't know why he ever turned that down. But in any case, he did get that loan. He did pay it back. Anyway, over time, as Disney's success grew, he became fascinated by the idea of forming theme parks. So he started focusing on that more as much so, if not more, than, production of more cartoons. He eventually turned over control of Disney Studios to his brother Roy and devoted full time to fulfilling his theme park dream. Disneyland opened in 1955. One of the major drawbacks to this was the fact that his brother Roy was an accountant who turned manager. Roy had no vision and no courage to stand up for his convictions. He was really quite a crappy business partner, and yet the whole time, Walt had kept him on. When things got tough, Roy would always, cave in to the opposition, and often went against Walt's wishes behind his back, as happened, of course, during World War II when he moved to settle the Red Strike against Disney Studios, which we talked about, what was it, yesterday, when Walt was conveniently out of the country. It was a major move he made without his brother's knowledge or consent. He was basically just a bozo, not to mention a butt kisser. Walt's venture into the new TV phenomena in the 1950s with the the Musketeers show was popular beyond his wildest dreams. That was a smart move on his part. However, Walt spared nothing in developing, directing, and producing the Musketeers, and after the expense of production, the show lost money for him ultimately. Even though it was popular, he put so much into it. In the long run, it wound up crippling him. He kept it going because it promoted Disney products, though, brought the Disney concept to national TV, and he felt that it would be a key vehicle for promoting his new Disneyland concept, his theme park. Walt's first choice for Disneylandia, as he first called it, was Burbank. However, the attempt to build it there ran into constant trouble from the city council, which Walt felt was being influenced against him by Universal Studios. Probably. We talked yesterday about the trouble that he got from, frickin' U.S. Army laying siege to his studio under, phony pretext. What a scam. Anyway, he then built Disneyland in Anaheim with the Mickey Mouse Club, ABC, and the tribe member Leonard Goldenson made their mark as a competing network. The Disney shows on ABC made it into a real competitor with CBS and NBC. Around 1960, Goldenson, that there were too many commercials on the shows. He was only around today to see the amount of commercials. Anyway, as other Jews had done to Disney, Goldenson canceled the two Disney shows. ABC had now made so much money off of Disney that they could produce their own shows and, again, cut Disney out of the fair share of Hollywood profits by the Jewish Brotherhood, if you will. So here they were, at it again. The same old game they had played on him, decades earlier. Now here they were doing it again. To keep his show on national TV, Disney approached NBC. I don't think he really understood fully what he was up against. What a rigged game the whole thing was. Well, I mean, he knew it was rigged, but I don't think he realized just how bad. Anyway, Goldenson refused to let Disney out of his contract, and Disney took ABC to court. In the end, ABC turned over all rights to Disney Productions and products to Walt, and cut all ties with him. I'm surprised they didn't kill Walt for that. Anyway, as Disney became more absorbed in his theme park, he started shifting more responsibility to his son-in-law, Ron Miller. This caused animosity from his brother Roy. It got to be a real mess. He felt that his son, Roy E. Disney, should be the future king of the Disney Empire, so there's a lot of infighting going on. The problem was that neither Ron, Roy, or Roy E. were ever really able to handle the Disney conglomerate, and future events, would prove this out. They just weren't business-minded. When Walt died from cancer, the bulk of his estate went to his wife and the female members of the family. His brothers Roy and Raymond were left out of the will altogether, as Walt believed that men should make their own livings and didn't need his help. So that created a lot of resentment there. Anyway, supposedly he's frozen cryogenically, awaiting future cure for cancer. Yeah, like they don't already have that. But anyway, supposedly, they're going to supposedly be able to revive him. Yeah, whatever. I remember years ago, there was an episode of, what the hell show was that now? I think it was Family Guy. Anyway, there's a scene where, they're reviving Disney from his cryogenic sleep there. The first thing he says, "Are the Jews still here?" And the doctor says, "Yep, they're still here." He lies back down and says, "Put me back under, wake me up when they're gone."